Okay, so on that last example, we went over bank-owned life insurance. We went over the granular kind of example of interest. Now, what I want to do now is go over the macro scale of just how massive of a infrastructure the bank utilizes to achieve their massive profits, and why it's so important that you understand the flow of how the banks make money. Now, let's just say this is a traditional bank. Okay, so you take your money. Let's say you have a $10,000 deposit you want to put in your bank. You just got a job, or you just, started really making some extra cash flow, or regardless, maybe you have great cash flow, and every time you deposit $10,000, the amount doesn't matter. The example is that your money flows from your wallet into the bank. Okay, now best case scenario, obviously this is in a magical fairy tale land. The bank is going to give you 2%. You're making 2% on your money. Now, even with high interest savings account, you're not going to make that. But for the sake of this example, I just want to show you how inflated the bank's numbers are and how little we really get. Now, ultimately, in a real world, you get what, $12 or credit to your account at the end of a year if you have a decent bank account balance. It's kind of crazy, right? But let's actually look at the numbers and how banks flow. So let's just say you need to finance a house, okay? You want to buy that dream home of yours, and you take out a loan. All the deposits that people put into a bank. See, it's important to imagine this for a second, but most people never stop and think. Banks don't have their own money. Banks are using everyone else's money. It's the same with the federal government. I won't go down a deep rabbit hole, but the federal government doesn't have its own money either. It collects money through the Internal Revenue Service. Banks, financial institutions, nor the government has no money of their own. They utilize our money. And it's interesting how wealthy they all are. You're starting to kind of track with this, right? So the fact that banks use everyone else's money, if you need a home loan, they're going to loan you other people's money, okay? So they're loaning you that money at 6% interest. They're fabricating that interest in between, and they're keeping the difference, okay? Now, when you get those keys to that house, years later, let's say that you sell that house, okay? The money then re-exchanges hands. Someone else takes a loan on the bank, to the bank on the house. They then get that loan. They go and pay you, and what happens? You take the profit from that house and you put it back. Yep, you guessed it, into the bank. That person then takes that money, or takes those keys to that house, and they move in. And now, let's just say, in another example, you have the same thing with a car. Okay, the car is loaned to you at 8% interest. And those keys are given to you when you exchange the money for the keys, whether it's a private seller or a dealership. Let's say that you have a car that you bought from a private seller, okay? The bank loans you the money for that. You're paying interest back to the bank on the car. You then have those keys. You decide you want to trade that car up. You take it to the dealership. What happens? You go to the dealership. The dealership profits off of you giving them that car on that trade. You finance something, whether it's self-financed through the bank or you go through the dealership, which is never a great idea. But either way, the bank is still the one ending up with the funds, whether you're buying or selling a car. It's fascinating. If we keep on with this, we could talk about home renovations. If you have that home up in the left-hand corner, and you say you need to, refinish the basement. You want to make that man cave after all these years, or you want to finish a nice area for your wife, right? Whatever the case may be, in this case, you go and you get a home renovation loan because you don't have the cash up front, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. You finish that dream basement. You're paying interest on that loan. In the meantime, the bank, when you take that interest on that loan, they're using that money that you're paying through interest to loan back out to the person who wants the car or wants the other home, okay? Now, in the meantime, in order to finish that basement, what has to happen? Well, you got to pay contractors. Those contractors then take the money that they got on the job from the home loan for your home renovation loan, and they're taking that money and they're going and putting that money in the bank. And if those contractors need to go buy a car, they're taking out a loan, they're paying interest to the bank. Now, I know this is probably like things that you've thought about before, but when you really start to map it out on a picture here, and you start seeing and talking about things like credit cards and the interest you're paying on those, where is the interest and all the payments that are going to the credit card companies? Where do you think that's going? Into the bank. So the banks are the end source goal for all of this capital, and they're loaning this money out hand over fist It's called fractional reserve lending, and it is how they are making so much money. In fact, on that measly little made up 2%, which is already higher than it should be, these banks are making 5, 10, 15, 20 times rate of return on the money sitting that's always in motion. See, here's the funny thing. If you notice, what are you looking at here? It's a flow of money. All of the money is going in and out of all these economies, the dealerships, the credit cards, through interest, through homes, all of these things, products and services sold and rendered. The money is not staying stagnant. Yet we are told to put our money into the banks and the 401ks and the IRAs and just let your money sit while the institutions are using the money the entire time. It's fascinating. Banks make 400 to 1200% rate of return on your money. So the real question is, when are you going to flip the script and start paying yourself the interest?